We'll get started. Evening, this is the Great Barrington Planning Board meeting for Thursday, February 27th. This meeting is being recorded. Is anyone else recording? Seeing no recording, we will go on. We don't have to do roll call attendance, right? No. Okay. So, Malcolm's here, Martha's here. Pedro, are you here?
I'm here.
Erica's here and Brandy's here, so we're all here. So far Jeremy is not here and Jackie is not going to be here. So we've got two Form As. Do you want to do the Form As?
Sure, I think Brian's up first,
Oh, Brian's up first,
at
okay.
least on the agenda.
Okay, 35 Silver Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other.
First things first, not a gold card, right?
check.
Yeah, great amount. So I'm Brian Casella from DEK Associates Land Surveyors. Prepared a plan for Blackwater Realty LLC. I think you've seen this property a couple times already. And
Do you have any other copies?
did you want these?
Yeah. That's good.
Oh, okay. Good. You'd like to look at it.
You wanna?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
So we're creating a one additional lot. It's 1.327 acres. Got a frontage of 132.58 feet. We're leaving the remaining land that is left would be have a frontage of 165 feet, 165.56 feet. And it's got an area of 1.486 acres, and that has an existing multi-residential building on it. And both lots meet the current zoning for the town of Great Barrington as building lots.
No, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So you've got 132 feet of frontage.
Mhm.
And you need 150 feet,
Oh, I'm sorry.
or you need 80% of that, but then you have to show us what
I'm
the
sorry.
dimension is at the setback line.
At the setback line, it's 50.5 feet.
I understand that we don't know how wide the property is there, because that becomes your new frontage.
Well, you can see that line is perpendicular. The other line is goes off askew. So it's actually more than 132.5 feet.
Well, you're probably right, but we'd like to see a measurement there.
So that's
Where's the measurement?
this line. Sorry, I'm saying this and that's not helpful for him taking notes. So Jonathan, what you're saying is the way the zoning is written, that 132.58 segment that runs parallel to Silver Street
That works because it's more than 80%.
is more than 80%, but at the front yard setback of 50 feet, which Mr. Casella is saying is approximated by the course of the subdivision that is the eastern boundary of the proposed parcel.
Yeah, so that's a perpendicular line. So that's perpendicular to the street. So if the frontage is 132.58 feet.
Yeah.
And the line running the side boundary line over by the Newsboy Monument Lane is askew, is greater than 90. And the distance is obvious, it has to be greater than 132.58.
I know, but you gotta prove to us that it's 150 feet.
Yeah, I don't think you have to put, you can see it's 100 and.
Let's see.
So we're scaling it right now, but it's of course just approximate and it's very close.
That's a small
angle
Do
difference
you see here?
between 90 and that.
So
What about this?
So it's this, right?
we don't wanna interpret your map, we want you to.
Okay.
Pretty close.
So do you wanna see like, here's a scale.
Well, actually, it's
Your
more than,
drawing is 30 scale. If we go, this is obviously I'm using your 50.5 line, so slightly further back, right? But it's very close to 150. And just give.
well, we did make sure we go 150.
Yeah.
There's no, and on top of that, we have a little extra additional frontage. I didn't notice, probably this
That
5.7.
feet.
But we definitely did design the lot. It is 150 feet. I mean, if you'd like me to do that
It-
on Monday, send you or have my girl send something.
It scales like,
If Nicole sends you something tomorrow, she can definitely show that to you, but that was an oversight, but when we designed it, definitely over 150 feet.
So can we approve this contingent on him sending a revised,
demonstrate that it meets a 150.
Where is she gonna build?
I don't know.
I don't know. There's a lot of fall off there. Down to the pond.
and then another question if I could, sort of neck down on lot. On the remaining lands, is that at least 40 feet, that flag? That flagpole?
Yeah, we had
Yeah,
this discussion
it's-
before, it's only.
Yeah, I think we did that last time. But that is, yeah, definitely is 40 feet.
Great.
And we can put that on there if we want to and show that to you.
Wait, Chris, is your question the western segment of the
No,
land
the,
remaining?
That comes off the.
Oh. Here, for where the existing gravel driveway is?
Yeah, is that, no, less than 40 feet.
Maybe you could show us that dimension too, because that does not look like it scales to 40 feet. That looks like it scales to like 38 feet at several locations.
Next question.
Yeah, that looks like 36 to me. So you may need to adjust that course.
But I don't think they have to because they've got the funding. It's not a rear lot.
I think there's a clause that says no area accessing the building part of the lot can be less than 30 feet.
Again, we'll send it to you. It is 40 feet.
Is there any reason you can't bring us a revised drawing at the next meeting? We meet every 2 weeks.
We could, I'd like to get it done today, but if that's, That's-
I understand, but if Chris thinks that there's a, it's not scaling to 40 feet, so I think you are gonna have to
The
redraft it.
definition says, no part of the lot that provides access to a proposed building site or an existing building shall be less than 40 feet in width.
Okay.
So if it scales to 40. If
yeah, but
it's 40, great.
if you'd like, we'll do it next meeting. It was just, that's an oversight on my part to show that to you, but it is all designed with that. We went on to home, it is. Does meet the zoning.
If it does come out and you have a plan submitted that meets it.
It doesn't. It's well under 40,
But that's the scale of the thickness of the line.
Yeah,
it's definitely not.
That's what we.
I would honestly tell you if it was, even if I give you the interior to interior, it's only 35 feet. If your plan is into this 30. Scale that into the 30. And it's scaling to like 35 and 36.
Okay.
So if you could just look at that, and we'll put you on next agenda, and it should be very straightforward and super easy with those 2 additional items. We'll have you in and out of here very quickly.
Okay,
All right with everything?
how about if I can send this tomorrow, if I show this on here and send you a copy. I mean, can I leave this to be signed? If I can prove to you, send you a PDF showing that?
I think it should be on the recorded document.
We should be on the one with
Yeah,
my large match.
Mylar should match what we've looked at here at the meeting.
50 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
not a problem, we'll make that change.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. You don't want this to.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, brushing it out and I forgot to put the, little stuff on. You're right, it should be shown.
Thanks. He's got one truck with.
Well, we get.
We've seen this one before. That's up one Rushwood Lane.
That's what we talked about. Conceptually, but we didn't have it.
I feel like this one's been split and re-split a couple of times. It didn't get adjusted the last time we were here, there was like a adjustment to accommodate the stormwater pond or something.
I haven't adjusted this one.
No.
Was this the subject of the special permit revision?
It was.
So now you have the legal lot.
We did sometimes. We just said they could do it, but.
Right.
Maybe that's it, okay.
Okay, for the record, my name is Jim Seidel. I'm a surveyor at SK Design Group. I'm representing Lennox Landings Barrington Brook Holdings LLC or David Margulies with this Form A submission for the property located at 1 Thrushwood Lane. The property is located on the west side of Thrushwood Lane at the intersection of Londonderry Drive in the Barrington Brook development. So the existing condition prior to the survey is the lot 1 of the subdivision, which is highlighted in blue here, just the overall perimeter of the lot.
Yep.
What we're proposing is this division, dividing lot 1 into 2 lots, lot 1A and lot 1B. And highlighted it, and that's pretty self-explanatory. Highlighted it into the 2 lots. That show. The property falls in the R2 zone. And both of these lots conform with that zoning. I did show the lot width at the 50-foot setback. I did show that dimension. And they exceed the 150-foot requirement. They exceed the lot area. They exceed the zoning requirements for the R2 zone.
Can you speak about the open space area there?
There is an open space area that was part of the special permit approval. We have set the monuments out there, the pipes that represent that open space. And the proposed houses and driveways will be within that area. I know it's a small area, but they have a design that fits.
Wait, they're gonna be in the open space?
Or it's within the area that's outside the open space, sorry. Within the little envelope there, the building envelope.
So the open space is the whole lot? you're saying?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's the
Okay.
area to the west and the,
I see.
yeah.
I think we saw the concept driveway housing layout when we did the special. permit.
If you want to see it,
Yeah,
I do have a print of it.
So Is this gonna be a shared driveway for 2 houses?
Yeah, Stanley Brown had some concern across the street, and so we put a shared driveway in.
yeah.
That's the concept of it.
I thought it would be a shared driveway.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's no conservation restriction for the drainage basin, I assume it's not actually wet.
Correct. It's actually exempt from the Wetlands Protection Act because it was installed with an order of conditions.
It's created.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's to be maintained, so.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
No.
We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan. Do we have a second? Thank you, Malcolm. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Did you-
I did.
Yeah. Let's see, we need to not sign, not sign the deeds, line. What did we sign before?
Never get to sign it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Maybe it's in the dimensional requirements too.
We good? Yeah, okay, all right, next item are the minutes from our meeting of February 6th. We have a motion to approve as amended.
Didn't Kim have some questions about one of the items on
Did we leave a couple of questions on the answer?
Oh, did you?
Is it amended and amended?
No, but the question is, there was a portion of the list that was on the last page. I moved it up because I thought it was part of that list, but you're saying it wasn't.
Right, let me find that. I think the minutes as recorded show the list that was submitted to the board, not the list amended by the board. Right.
Yes. Which it should, that's what it should have shown.
I mean, you can show both, but it's.
The original should be included in the minutes, is that?
Yeah.
So,
Did you want to clarify in the minutes like that's the initial list? And that it was revised through discussion, because we did create a red line change, right?
right,
After quite a bit of discussion.
I think she got that all right.
Yeah, no, it does appear right, right?
My real question was that there was, I think that there was just information after where my signature block was. There probably should have been back up someplace above.
I took it out of there and I put it up, well,
Okay,
in your,
but did you send that to me? I didn't see.
Yeah. no, that was in the amended minutes.
oh, yeah, there it is. So you move that.
Okay. I see, okay, all
Is
right,
that all right then?
gotcha.
Okay, so it's just a motion to approve as amended the one time. Okay,
Second,
thank you, Malcolm. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion on those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. All right, we'll move on to our next item, 546 Main Street, review proposal submitted by AM MGMT2 LLC, 235 East Street, Pittsfield, Mass. For a new building with 20-unit residential, with new building with 20-unit residential units
Oops.
at 546, I missed that. Great Barrington, the project requires a mixed-use development, and water quality protection overlay district special permit from the select board and site plan approval from the planning board per sections 8.2, 9.2, 10.4, and 10.5 respectively of the Great Barrington zoning bylaw. We look like we have Mr. Scalise here.
You do. Good evening. For your record, Jim Scalise with SK Design Group. Here on behalf of AM Management too. I gave Chris a thumb drive, so he should have a color site plan he can put up for me. I also brought paper copies because sometimes old scale helps if we need to scale something.
You
So-
don't have the architectural.
I do. I have them full size
Okay.
on the board and I
I
can
got
go.
a lot of questions about the architecture.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we can go there. I have it in my presentation if you'll bear with me.
Okay.
The property that we're speaking about is at the corner of, South Main Street and Mahavy Street. The street address is 546 Main Street, map 22, lot 56. It's 0.6 acres in size. It's a corner lot. It's located in the MXD zone. So the proposal is, in the MXD zone, the zoning bylaw, was recently amended at town meeting to allow, multifamily housing by right. There's a little snafu, I think, that, at least in this case, the applicability of the project was difficult because of, requirements under the multifamily section that require 50% open space. And as part of coverage, unlike the table of dimensional requirements, it requires, the inclusion of pavement, sidewalks, and all, impervious cover in that calculation. So, we included a mixed-use space in the architectural plans on the first floor, a small office space, about 480 square feet. So the reason, just to kind of give you some context, that's why we applied for this project as a mixed-use project. And then I'll go into the zoning details as I proceed. So, the little history on this parcel, back in, between around 2008 to 2011, the existing residential structures, it appears, were raised on this property. So the property currently is a lawn, space, has some mature trees around it. I know in particular, there's, approximately a 48-inch diameter, trunk diameter maple, very large, mature maple tree, on Mahavy Street that was, a point of contention. So we worked very hard to move the building as far south as possible on the lot to protect that tree. The property has 132 feet of frontage on South Main Street and 198 feet of frontage on Mahavy Street. And as I drive down Mahavy Street, I see mixed uses. So I see residential uses, I see some neighborhood businesses. It seems like a transitional zone that it's quite fitting, I think, to have multifamily residential at this location. The property is also located in an overlay district, a water quality protection overlay district, which requires a special permit from the Board of Selectmen. And it's related to the aquifer and infiltrating treated stormwater, which is included in our site design. So as far as dimensional requirements of the underlying zone, we meet all those requirements. In the MXD, the minimum square footage for the lot is 5,000. We have a little over 30,000. Lot frontage is 154. You need 50. Side setbacks of the proposed structure are right on or just slightly over the setback on South Main Street. And then as generous as we could offer on Mahavy Street, again, as it relates to that tree. This property has some history. You may know some of it better than I do, but as I read through, and I brought copies of some of it if it's necessary to review it. But a special permit was issued, I believe, back in 2008. There was some litigation, there was some delays, there was COVID, so there's several extensions. There was actually a Permit Extensions Act in there at one point. So this thing expired, my best guess is around 2020. The previous application, that was a 3-story building. It was actually a couple of buildings. And there was 22 units. So the proposal here is 20 units in a 2.5 story building. It's got a pitched roof. So, that's a little, different, than what was approved before, but there was a similar, I'll call it, development. That development had two curb cuts. We're proposing, one curb cut. So this building would be considered mixed use as it relates to the definition under the bylaw, because we include on the first floor a 480 square foot office space. Under mixed use development in the bylaw, under sections, 8.4. I personally was a little confused by this, but I deferred to Chris and the board. It says that under general, for mixed uses in, B, B2, I, and I2 zones, all of the following requirements shall apply. And then later it says for mixed uses in MXD zones, see section 911. So I went to section 911 without thinking that these requirements applied at all. We were asked to add this, a special permit, to meet those requirements. So if that's the interpretation, I think we're covered, although I'm still not convinced, but that's neither here nor there. But under item requirement 2, it says, inside the village center overlay district, at least 75% of the street level floor space shall be reserved for non-residential use. But it says outside the village center overlay district, which I assumed was like B2 or, I or I2 zones, not the MXD, but I guess it depends how you look at it. It says the plan, you need 25% of the street level. So I would need a waiver for that, but the next sentence says the planning board or the SPGA, if it's not the planning board, may by special permit reduce the non-residential space requirement. So maybe there's latitude to have that conversation. So that's one of our requests for a special permit, is to waive or reduce the amount of square footage for non-residential space to allow this project to go forward.
And you're asking to reduce it by how much?
From, I have that written down, from 1,705 square feet to 480 square feet.
It's like 8 or 9% or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a token amount, and the reason it was done that way was, we think that there's a bit of a contradiction as it relates to multifamily and the MXD, but so we're trying to work through that.
Thank you.
As far as water quality is concerned, so if I go to the site plan, and I'll go through the general site plan requirements, but I did just a sketch of the stormwater for you. This just shows that there's an infiltration system. It's standard chambers that you've probably seen many times. We have catch basins, all the roof drains tie into the system. We have a storm scepter unit, a hydrodynamic separator to treat the water before it goes in. We provided stormwater calculations to show that it infiltrates the proper amount, and it also has enough capacity so that the amount of water it discharges meets the peak discharge requirements. So we think, a very solid stormwater approach. We included a full design calcs and a full stormwater report. I can talk more at length about that, but it's generally boring, so I'll keep going until you stop me. I'd like to get into site plan compliance. So we looked at parking. The way we design parking on this lot is that as you laid out a full lot, so like even the Urban Land Institute, which has, I think, fairly minimum standards for layouts of parking areas, requires about 59 feet from, curb line to curb line in parking, and that's pretty tight. So we have this just over that, just a couple feet we're at about 61 feet. And the way to make this work is we actually created an overhang with the second floor with columns, and you can park under like a carport under the building, and I can show you kind of a picture of that. And again, we can spend as much time on architecture as you want, if you kind of let me beat my way through. So it would look something like that, where you can park, under the back of the building, the rear of the building. And again, that allowed the building to be shifted south by the depth of the parking space, which gave me I think the setback that I needed to try to protect that tree.
But the problem with that, Jim, is that the posts, pylons or piers, whatever you want to call them, are violating the width of the parking space. You're showing 18 feet, there are 2 parking spaces, center line and center line to the posts. So we don't have 9 feet per space.
Okay. We can try to make adjustments to that. I'm over parked, so we can talk about that as well. I have 24 parking spaces provided where the bylaw requires 21, so I have 3 extra parking spaces. So if you looked at it that way, there might be 4 spaces really impacted. The other thing you could talk about is that, your bylaw allows, 3 subcompact spaces. So if I made those spaces subcompact, you only need to be 8 feet wide, and I could lengthen those spaces slightly up against the hedge, if you felt that was more appropriate. I didn't really think that was, a significant issue from a design standpoint, but I grant you under the bylaw, you could look at it that way,
So
so.
you're making it a really tight parking space. And if someone hits it, the building is invaded.
Yeah, that's why they're drawn like that, they're concrete, right? But they're, yes, I'm not worried about the building, I'd be more worried about your fender, but yeah, agreed. So I'm happy to make those site plan adjustments if you think that would be appropriate.
You also might flip the handicap space so that the walking area leads to the door as opposed to the blank wall.
Sure, I can do that.
I thought you could.
Yeah, okay.
But that takes you into the architectural, so when we get there, we'll talk.
We'll talk about that more. Okay. Under lighting, we spent some time on the lighting plan. I actually must have went back and forth 4 times with our lighting consultant. And the fact is to make the lighting plan work on a site like this, it's a relatively small site, is that we just used lighting on the building. So if you look at the light fixture, it's really just a wall sconce that goes on the building itself. It's downcast. As we put poles, we tried 3 or 4 pole configurations, to try to brighten the parking lot. I think it just spills light onto the neighboring properties, and it's gonna be problematic from that standpoint. So you have a very low lit site, but I think it's in this location with residential uses around it, it's fitting. So if there is a criticism, it might be not enough light, but, I have some communities that I work in that have a 1-foot candle maximum. Now I have, 0.6 down through the site driveway, 0.8, and then I'm parking underneath, and I can have some recessed lights under the deck there in the parking area. So I think I have a scheme that works, very modest lighting plan.
And did you happen to provide a cut sheet? I don't remember.
The very last page, it's,
Well, that's the photometric, and
there's
I,
not- well, there's definitely a cut sheet. I thought it was the last page of the application.
It's the last page before the architectural work.
The next one is landscaping. So we provided a very schematic, as part of the application, a very schematic landscape plan. And so I gave Chris today a digital copy of this. I think we'll just pass those out. There's a bunch there if folks want to see them. Would you like to see them? So what we've shown is, just recently having worked down the street at Guido's, we know there was a fair amount of interest in street trees. So we show where we have space, we show larger trees. We show some triple birches that are closer to the building. And we've kind of infilled and saved trees. So this new sketch kind of gives you quantities and sizes. And a plant schedule that's much more specific than was included in the original application. That was something I didn't realize, so my apologies if you didn't have a chance to really review this. But it includes, the types of shrubs, where they're planted and the numbers. And it adds that specificity that I think the project deserves, so. Hopefully I've righted or wrong on that one. That's landscaping. So, we're using native trees. I think we have 31 shrubs. And they're all native plants off of the town's plant listing. One item under site plan review is always, trash receptacle. So in the lower left corner or the southwest corner, there's a dumpster enclosure. There's a concrete pad, shows a fence gate. So that's an enclosed fence enclosure around a dumpster on the site. So talking about architecture, for the record, I am not an architect. Apparently I'm playing one here on TV, but we're going to try to give you a little bit of a kind of just an overview, and we're happy to take comments and put them back to our consultant for adjustment if needed. So the proposed building is a two-story building. It's got 6,820 square feet on the ground floor, and it's 8,700 square feet on the second floor. The building will be constructed with concrete foundations, conventional wood framing, and cladding to include wood and stone elements, and with the roofing to be architectural grade asphalt shingles. I think it's obvious we have dormers on both sides along the roof to try to add some elements that are more residential in character. As part of the design review committee, the primary comment that was kind of discussed at length was really about the elevations. And they weren't so much about the front and rear elevation, but more about the side elevation as it was against the street. And trying to add some interest to those because they were very plain. So there's been some adjustment and improvement. We've added some stone elements to those additional windows. We added some relief into the elevation to try to add some character to the facade in that regard. So these drawings are schematic, and as I look at these as as an engineer, I don't see a truly accessible unit. You may have some adjustment there, of course. I think there's a discussion to be had with the building inspector potentially about affordability for a new project. So there's work to be done, but I think there's enough to give you a concept. And I know I have two architects in here staring at me like you're crazy, but from a site plan review perspective, I have a schematic design here that I'm trying to give you a design intent, and then I'm happy to take your input. So the proposed first floor has 8 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment style units with access, all exterior access at the ground level. The generous overhang is providing ground level parking on the site, and as Jonathan and I just spoke about. So we show columns supporting. We could probably remove a column with a little bit of structural engineering. And then I think the answer is to make those spaces a little smaller, making those the compact spaces, and I can flip those and accommodate the dimensional issue. And I think it's a fair, if not excellent comment as it relates to the accessible parking space. The proposed second floor contains, and the second floor is accessed by a stair tower. Both here and in the front of the building for 2 means of egress. So that's just more of a center corridor type layout. That looks something like that. That has 11 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom units, 1 studio unit serviced by central corridors and accessible via the 2 stairways. So the first floor also contains that mixed use space. And, we felt, our impression of the bylaw was that there was an attempt at town meeting to make this type of use by right at this location. But putting any density on this property and meeting the 50% criteria seems a bit counterintuitive. So we found ourselves in a bit of a predicament. If we went under that particular section of the bylaw, I think you find yourself needing a variance, which is a very steep hill to climb. So we're asking for instead a waiver by including some office space, which can be a rental office or a manager office for the apartments, or even a small coffee shop, I guess, or some other common use. But that's our honest approach to that problem. Next item under site plan review that we looked at was traffic. Previous applications didn't appear to really give much attention to traffic at all, but I felt that we ought to at least look at it. So there's this type of use really is a fairly low generator. It's 27 trips in the AM or PM peak hour, which is pretty modest. And then for 20 units, you have about 244 trips on a weekday, which is the peak weekday, which it makes sense. I mean, if you have that's a pretty high or conservative estimate, meaning a single family home on the high end is about 10 trips. So if we had 20 houses, we'd have 200. So 244 is a lot of trips, particularly for.
Especially for a single car.
For 1 car and a bedroom unit. So that, ITE is multifamily. It's looking at these national averages. So I think those numbers are high. But I really don't see a traffic issue. I think the stop sign controls at the end of the highway street work. We made the curb cut, onto that street, which is the street that is less traffic than South Main. It doesn't require a DOT permit. And then you have stop sign control at both ends. So we have excellent sight distance, relatively flat topography. So I think we have a pretty good situation as it relates to, traffic. One other item under traffic is, pedestrian safety. So we looked at, constructing sidewalks, and it seemed kind of crazy to construct a parallel sidewalk to an existing sidewalk. So we tried to just tie in, where we could, sidewalks to the existing walkways that currently exist along the highway and along the highway street.
And those sidewalks connect both
To the town side, yes.
Yeah,
they connect to the residential front.
yeah, to the doors in the front.
Nice.
Yep, yep. And then underneath here, the entrance is really up the stair tower or just right into the units. Off the parking lot. Other items, as part of our kind of civil engineering impact statement are, we looked at sewer and water. We believe generally a modest use at a little over 3,000 gallons a day. There was a provision in the previous permit that included a, I think it was called a muffin grinder, which is it's a mechanical device that's in a sewer manhole. So we included that in our application to work with DPW. I remember that being a requirement, so we just mimicked the previous application's use of that apparatus. As far as water, we have adequate supply. We have 2 fire hydrants within 500 feet. There's one just across the street here. There's one about 400 feet down Mahawi Street, which is within tolerances for fire protection. This building under the Mass Building Code would absolutely be sprinklered. So I think we have a good fire protection plan. The site plans include erosion controls, kind of circuiting the site to protect anything. The site again is very flat. Elevation is, 716, 715. There's a foot of grade across the whole property. Not a lot of erosion expected, and the soils here are excellent. It's an A-type soil, gravelly material. So we don't expect there to be any real runoff issues here during construction. Cuts and fills. If I look at your site plan review requirements, it asks about, I don't know, about a half a dozen items, maybe 8 items. Cuts and fills are minimal here. It's a relatively flat site. Pedestrians, I mentioned the sidewalks that are included in our site design. Scenic views, we don't think that really applies here. We don't believe we're obstructing any scenic views on South Main Street. Screening and parking, we felt the most, the street trees we felt were gonna be a point of discussion potentially, but really more importantly, this neighbor's house is extremely close. It's on the property line.
Which one's that?
To the south. And so we propose an arborvitae hedge along that entire southern line, something we can trim and maintain, but it provides a green edge. And then, we do as part of a multifamily development, we put a bike rack and a little open green space. It's modest, of course, it's small, but we're trying to keep, the green space up along the road. But it was in an effort where this person enters, this stairway, there was that kind of little bit of green space was in that location.
With regard to the encroachment that's located in that southwest corner of the property.
Yeah.
Is that an actual structure that is being shown that encroaches into the property line? It looks like there's stairs and then a little
Yeah,
porch,
that,
but is that a stoop or something?
yeah, that's a stoop, I think, but I honestly, I didn't personally look at that, so I can't report accurately what that is. That was located by my survey crew, but that's not something I personally stopped and looked at. So I'm not sure. I can get you a photograph of it though.
You may just wanna look at it in terms of, we wouldn't wanna approve a hedge that's like blocking the door. The hedge
Fair
would have
enough.
to be planted like 1 inch from the stoop.
Yeah, oh, I figured we'd do a little field adjustment there, or maybe not plant for 10 feet or something, but yeah, I'll get you some detail. It's a fair question. Excuse me.
What about the snow removal?
Snow removal on a site like this is gonna require, either, a light storm. Last winter, we could use the small space and be fine. This winter, it's being hauled off site. There's no real ability to manage it. These are grass on gravel parking spaces, and we think that that's where you're over parked. As it relates to the MXD. So, you've got a little bit of green space here, and you've got a little open space here to kind of put, normal, we'll call it, or last year, which was a mild winter, which seems to be more the norm than we think we can handle that on site, but as you get a winter like this one, you're gonna be removing it, and we understand that as part of the management plan.
Did you provide us a detail for that press on gravel or no?
No. Would you like one?
That was a recent addition, wasn't in the original.
Oh, the grass and gravel?
It was.
It was there.
In the original.
Yeah, who's there? I didn't provide you with, a detailed spec on how we're gonna build it. I figured that was more of a construction related issue, but I'm happy to. We use a geotextile.
That's what I was wondering sometimes.
Yeah, that's what we've had luck with. The only issue we have with that is really a lot of snow removal.
Yeah.
Stacking snow, there's fine, but trying to plow it is where you run into
Right.
trouble. Lighting, I already spoke about, that's one of your site plan, review. The issue there really is any light poles along the parking lot were spilling light over to the southerly neighbors, so we just removed them from the design.
Narrowly, the lighting looks, I think, okay in terms of walkways and egress ways. I'm just curious in terms of fixture selection, if you've got this sort of like colonial style building and then you've got this sort of like very utilitarian light. I know you're not the architect.
Yeah, that's the problem with civil engineers.
I know.
Okay, so, at least me, I should speak for myself.
Just one problem.
Well, yeah, I'm very practical, right? So I picked a practical light with basically a photometric. And
Yes.
I'm expecting that an architect could match that with an attractive fixture. I looked and I was out of my,
No goose.
I'm not allowed to do that at home, let alone at work, so. So building scale is something, and I think, this may be where you want to spend some time on architecture. The previous design in my defense, had a 3-story building. It looked like a pretty industrial building where we thought this type of building was a little bit, it's a large structure with mass. We were not suggesting otherwise, but we felt that, we made an effort with the peak roof and the dormers to add some residential features to it. And it's as you build a moderately affordable type structure like this, you run into, folks trying to build this very simple box to keep construction costs down.
In
And-
terms of your renderings, though, it would probably be very helpful to get like a street view rendering that shows you're trying to preserve trees, which do a lot to sort of break up the mass of the structure. It would be useful to be able to see that as part of the application record.
Okay.
In terms of helping people understand what mitigations preserving those trees may offer.
So sort of the opposite.
Yeah, the opposite view
So
with
like
the
the
trees
north
there.
elevation and,
Yeah, the north,
Yeah,
well,
east.
the north and the east, yeah, where the street views are located.
Yeah, we can give you a color rendering.
yeah, cause this,
What?
the north elevation is.
What are the dormers doing?
Not much, other than just provide an aesthetic to the exterior.
So they don't access, you can't access them from the second floor units?
It does, it looks to me like it's the design, I didn't design this building, but it looks to me like on the second floor plan.
If you look at the elevation, it shows ceiling heights at 8 feet, so those dormers are just sitting in the attic.
They're just sitting in the attic, yeah.
And the attic is inaccessible.
They're just decorative.
They're decorative.
That's a lot of attic.
And there's no access to the attic.
If they want to save money, they can just do away with the dormers. Dormers are corny.
I'm okay with that. I'll take any input you wanna give us. We're happy.
They're not doing anything.
No, they're not.
A lot of attic.
Well, if the building has mass, it just seemed to us that a flat roof or a flatter roof was worse.
Solar option on that outfield?
Not with the dormers.
No, not with the dormers, yeah. If you remove the dormers, yeah, I don't have, I got one large tree that I'm picking out right there. Yeah, you'd have sunlight up there. You could make solar work.
Yeah, their choice.
Yep.
Is, because the building's sprinkled, do you not need a second means of egress from a bedroom?
That's right.
You don't,
Yeah.
and you can have dead end corridors of any length.
That's right, essentially. You get out.
Really?
We
If you get you
checked
out of there, it's, you know, the theory is that you'll have sprinklers. Wetting the site so that you can make it to the stairs to get out, but that's the idea.
Good luck trying to sell these.
Are they condos or rent?
No, the rentals.
Good luck trying to rent them. I mean, that many people want to live in a bedroom. There's no windows.
Right. No, I know.
And half the bedrooms in this structure are.
Well, you might tell your architect too, that, I mean, you're gonna be spending a lot of money on lighting and, or, I don't know who
The designers, yeah.
PCE is from Newtown, Connecticut. They're gonna spend a ton of money providing fresh air to these bedrooms
That's true, yep.
and lighting. They've got a couple of rooms that are uninhabitable because they're less than 70 square feet. These rooms on the first floor that are underneath the overhang, we're gonna be the worst spaces imaginable. They're like caves. Look at your rendering.
Yeah, right.
That's southern, that's direct southern exposure in your rendering up there. Look how dark it is. You know, this is not directed at you, James. I think you do a great job.
No, I'm listening.
But this building is offensive to me and to this town, I believe. It's a cynical building that just comes in and is just taking advantage of a crisis situation and giving us the worst possible solution. You know, we on this board, and if you're coming, I don't want to speak for everybody here, but on this board, we take great care to try to create policy that addresses the way we want the town to shape and look. And this building completely turns the shoulder to the street. It's a corner lot, so it has like excellent advantage to really create something dynamic there. And it just lets it down and lets us down in so many ways. You know, to have bedrooms with no windows, I mean, that is like tenement, you know, circa 1890s New York City style stuff. I mean, that's just like, who does that? I don't understand that. And then, you know, I mean, these are, I'm assuming that this office space is this, that the whole thing is a sketch, but there, you know, no windows in the office either. Weird. I don't know, it's just, it's really, I think, offensive to the town, and it's a really cynical design. I mean, you know, I'm happy to tell whoever put pencil and paper to his face. I know it's not you.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm the messenger. I'll take it. I got it.
And there is no ADA accessible unit,
It needs, well, absolutely, it'll need it needs a revision for that.
and you need a bathroom with a 5 foot.
Yeah, what's gonna happen is one of those units is gonna have one bathroom instead of two. It's the only way that's gonna fit. But,
Whatever you do.
Right.
It's gotta be done.
absolutely.
Did they consider an elevator?
I think cost moved it out pretty early. It's the impression I got.
You're trying to put a lot of, you're giving the whole population and rating a whole population go up.
Yeah, they're walk up for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole ground floor is technically accessible. You know, it could be made accessible. Technically. I think it's 30% of you need to provide even more than 4 units, I think. I can't remember what the architectural access board requirements are for multifamily, how many units you need.
30 seems high. I thought it was less than that. Like group 2 units was 5% or
Yeah,
something.
something like that.
Yeah.
I know I'm wrong, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I think if you had a couple units here, one unit would be fully accessible, and then you might have to have adaptability in the other,
Right,
something like that.
that's right.
So that, I guess that really concludes my, presentation. I think traffic is reasonable. We have 20 apartments. I've gone through the need for a waiver to allow a smaller mixed-use space. We think the project has little impact on municipal utilities or other public surfaces. You know, we think there's some diversity in the neighborhood as it relates to use. So we think that multifamily fits as a general use in this location. The MXD zone allowed, a new vote allowed multi-unit dwellings, 9 units or more to be by right. So we think that, you know, a little bit larger project was contemplated. We worked hard on the natural environment, trying to save the trees along Highway Street. And we think the project ultimately, there's obviously a need for residential dwelling units in the community and the state overall. So we think at a high level that this project is a good one. We can work on some of these comments that you've shared with us. How would you like to proceed?
Who else has questions? Malcolm, we haven't heard much from them.
No, I mean, I actually echo Pedro's concerns about rooms without windows. When you were talking about the dormers earlier, I thought there were gonna be skylights up on the second floor, but that's not gonna happen. But I'm really concerned about the mixed use versus multi-use. Putting a 500 square foot office to get around the
Open space.
open space requirement for multifamily. And if it was 25%, then that would be fine, but cutting down asking for a special permit to allow them to use multi-use instead of multifamily seems to fly in the face of our bylaws. And maybe you found something that we should address in the bylaws, but that's kind of what they are. So if this were a much more attractive property, I think proposal, I would be inclined to grant the waiver for the mixed use, but as it is, that sticks in my throat as well. So
Fair enough. I appreciate your candor.
There's no basement, is that correct?
That's correct.
So there's no storage for any of the tenants.
So I like to speak to the mixed use question. So by definition of the zoning bylaw, the building's mixed use. That's beyond question, just reading the definition of the bylaw. And the table of uses says mixed use is allowed in this zone. That's beyond question. I think my interpretation of section 8.4 is that it does not apply to the MXD zone. And so the waiver is not required. But it's something I would encourage the board to discuss and possibly encourage the applicants to get a legal opinion on whether or not it applies.
we applied 8.4 to the project on Manville Street. Because they put, at the time, 8.4 read any portion of commercial space would define it as mixed use. Subsequent to that, we changed that to be 25% outside of the village center overlay district. So maybe we were wrong before, but we did apply 8.4 to the project on Manville Street.
I think it doesn't, I think it reads that 8.4.
That's how I read it, and I'm not here to argue. I just,
Well, I think we'll have to look more closely, but I always assumed that it did, so, yeah.
because I mean, I went as far as submitted this with the application not including a special permit for 8.4 and was corrected. So
I don't think this board needs to decide that. But
so we ought to get a legal opinion on that, you think?
You're saying because it refers you to section 9.11, you think it's taking you away from this?
yeah,
And it's specific in the first part of it to what zones it applies to. It just seems-
We need a lawyer.
it's the first sentence that says.
Yeah.
Where these requirements apply.
I can tell you this, that having done this for a really long time, lawyers usually will cite a case on something that doesn't really apply and then tell you it's really up to you. That's what that'd be my 2 cents on that. It's free because I'm not a lawyer, but it's
It's your architectural advice.
yeah, right, yeah, but it seems as though it's really usually it's what the community believes the intent was, is the driving factor that will decide that. So I think schedule is a question that I have. It sounds like I have some work to do. I'd like to, work on the architecture to, improve it. I'd like to fix, some of the parking comments. I think there's some good comments there. And I'm not sure where we are on, as agendas go for the special permit. And I don't think we're ready for that. Does that sound right to everyone?
I think your special permit hearing is 10.
So maybe should we postpone, I'm looking for your advice, but it sounds like we should postpone that and come back to you.
It's up to you and your client. I mean, we haven't heard the board's opinions on the questions you've asked in terms of site plan review and approval. And in terms of a recommendation on the water quality special permit. And finally, if necessary, which I don't think it is, a recommendation on the mixed use waiver. So,
But we don't wanna be, we don't wanna be working on a building that's gonna change. Which I think this probably will. Hopefully.
But our job is not to evaluate the buildings, to
No.
evaluate the site.
I understand, but if the changes affect what you've been looking at, then you gotta go through the process again.
typically for site plan approvals, the planning board will. And where there's also a special permit, the planning board will make recommendations on the special permit and let the select board go through that. And then if passed, and maybe there's some revisions during that. The applicant will come back here to wrap up the site plan review if there's any changes through the special permit process.
That's been my experience.
So the zoning use gets approved through the special permit process, and then the final touches are put onto the site plan. By this board, once the use is allowed. So there's that possibility too.
I think at this point, if we can focus on any additional comments related to the site, the layout, landscaping, that we want Mr. Scalise to comment on or revise, I think that's useful.
I just had a couple of juicy things with the
Yeah, Jeremy, go ahead.
qualities. Like electric charging for bicycles now. Not a user, but, I notice a lot of people arriving at the store with electric bikes and,
Mhm. Yeah, they're everywhere.
they're not all that light to drag up to the second floor.
Okay.
And so I didn't know about that. I mean, I think nice, like a nice place to store your bike is under cover in general. Yeah,
Well, I'll tell you, if one of the, it's not related to any of your relevant comments regarding the aesthetic or architecture, but if this space, mixed use space wasn't required because that multifamily section didn't apply, or I guess I would need it, I still would need it.
It wasn't that the multi-family
Because
section
the,
didn't apply,
no, I-
but the mixed use percentage.
Yeah, I
required.
still need it, okay.
So you still need to be mixed use.
Yeah, I still need that, because that, in one of the versions that I saw, that space was a little smaller and I had room for a bike rack underneath. Which was nice, so I'm not
One of the parking spaces under the
Yeah.
overhang too.
Yeah, I can, okay, I gotta think about that. Okay, I'll write it down.
that's
That might
some-
solve your killer problem. Create a smaller bike area and then you.
Yeah, I think it's the compact cars will fit in there, and I just gotta look at the spacing. I think I can eliminate one of the columns and make that work, right, with a steel beam. So that's something I can do. The rest of this stuff is, like I said, is not really what I do for a living, so we'll ask.
Jim, that south stairwell that protrudes into the drive aisle in the parking area. What is the width between the edge of pavement for the open space bike rack area and that?
I think it's 20 feet. Might be.
21 is what you've got between your, parking. Or like maybe 12, and I wondered if you need bollards to protect that area.
Yeah, okay. Oh, it's 10 scale? Yeah, so it's less, yeah, only 14, 15 feet.
So you
That's
wouldn't,
overhang though, so,
right, but you wouldn't comfortably get
so I got
two cars
16,
passing.
yeah, I got 16 feet, yeah.
And then, Jim, with the location of the trash cycling area. I mean, I know it makes the most sense and it's probably nice in a sense for the residents that the truck doesn't drive so far in.
Well, yeah, that's, I mean, this site isn't really gonna accommodate a truck very well, so.
Yeah.
It's somewhat of a necessity.
But in terms of like driving in every day
And looking at
and
it,
looking at it, if it could be very well.
all right, let me think about
screened
that,
In
yeah,
that sense
okay.
as well.
I didn't think of that, all right.
Or at least like propose some sort of like stockade enclosure or something that can.
Yeah, or something that doesn't easily get destroyed, because they often get destroyed very
They
quickly,
always
and
need
then
me.
all you're looking at is dumpster.
Yeah, what we found is, that we have to, if we put bollards behind the dumpster, when they come in and pick it up, they hit the bollards and they don't rip the fence out. So that's been our answer. So that's a, it actually works pretty well. I mean, just, you're dealing with a fairly the lowest common denominator here. These guys are, you know,
You can have like
They're not being
flashing lights.
delicate.
yeah, they're not really worried about the fence.
In terms of the Route 7 landscape buffer, do you have your required number of street trees based on the frontage? I think it's 1 per 25 feet.
Yeah, we think with the ones we've saved, I have that furnish
There's
number.
one saved, right?
It's in the narrative.
It is in the
Page 6 on the narrative.
Well, we looked at that. I know we talked about it. I'm not. if it-
That street was almost, that street's almost the reason, right? Like, that street's so beautiful with all the,
Yeah, there's mature trees.
with all the trees along. And then we're like, oh,
I-
Stockbridge Road used to be like that.
Is that a Norway maple though? At 28 incher?
On the corner.
Yeah. And that's not a special tree in Norway maple,
No, it's just their grand size, I think.
right?
Say that to my wife.
They're weedy. It's seeds everywhere.
Especially if we're dead.
Yeah, the thing with them is they're terrible on sidewalks.
Yeah, the sidewalks along there are all heaved as it is.
Drive up Abbey Hill. And it's like, there's like a canopy of them, and they're all just fall.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
might,
they
we
break really
might
terribly.
want one more tree along.
So just check that,
Okay.
check your 1 per 25.
Okay, I'll give you that. I'm just gonna put,
And then if you wouldn't mind on your site plan, could you just give an indication of any other like pavement restricted areas? Like, the doorways to the stairwell are really unprotected. To the south stairwell
okay,
and the office door, like that just seems very exposed for someone who would be a pedestrian coming in and out of that space.
okay.
Is there intended to be like a curb there and a landing or something? Everybody?
I'm not sure on the timing. Are we expected to make a recommendation to the select board at this
Do you
meeting?
need that for the meeting on the 10th?
Yeah, it sounds like, if you're comfortable with the water quality portion, because that's what I'm going to them
We'll
for,
get that real quick.
not the site plan review, I think I can defer some of that
Okay.
with your permission to your next meeting or the meeting even after, so I can iron this stuff out.
There's no toxic or hazardous materials being proposed.
No,
Since the system for groundwater recharge must be provided. So the applicant is providing a treatment and infiltration system. Consistent with state requirement.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with the
Yeah.
water quality, recommendation, but
So I think in that regard, we could make a positive recommendation.
But the other part of it is that, because they are the special permit granting authority, they're also granting the waiver to the percentage requirement for the multi-use,
Right,
or mixed use.
We'll bring our attorney to that meeting and
Well, if it's
Maybe you can
required,
address both in separate motions tonight.
okay.
do you want to take the easy one first?
Well,
Water protection overlay district?
yeah, are we there then? Are we ready
I think we
to?
could be.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. For, I'll move that we, submit a positive recommendation for a special permit.
As it relates to the water
As it
quality,
relates to water
water quality
quality.
protection overlay district,
Overlay district.
we need to make any recommended findings. So we have, a motion for a positive recommendation as it relates to the water quality protection overlay district. Do we have a second?
I'll say.
All right, do we have any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No opposed, okay.
Mhm.
Next would be,
If it's determined the mixed use section applies to the site,
mhm.
Yeah.
And the motion would be,
what would your recommendation on that requested special? permit? That's the question.
To reduce
in-
the,
I don't feel it's for
Percent.
you don't feel inclined to reduce the required 25%
Street level,
street level.
non-residential.
so what is it,
Yeah. that's what I wanted
25
get that
to-
right.
9? That way.
25% of the street level floor space.
I mean, given, I do not believe that it meets the requirements for, special. Is this it, does this require special permit?
No,
Requirements?
Yes,
Yeah, so
the,
The variance would.
the waiver,
it's not a variance, it's a waiver, yeah, but
No,
It's a waiver.
is that a special
because it's by
permit?
right now.
yeah, to be granted
So it
by,
has to meet
On
all
the
the special permit
it's a waiver
requirements,
on the special permit.
Yeah. which I don't believe it does, so.
You don't believe it should be?
I don't believe it meets all of the requirements for a special permit, this property, as far as the aesthetics and the design of the building.
Hmm, okay, I guess I'm not 100% sure where our decision, I think we have opinions, right? But I don't know if our role is to decide the special permit criteria.
What do we decide, what would we
We're making
recommend?
a recommendation on the waiver, because the special permit granting authority is
Under
not
what,
us.
under what, a basis? Why would we grant a waiver?
I don't think we're granting it. We're
Why would
making
we
a
recommend that the select board grant a waiver?
If the,
Well, it's our purview, so we would have to grant it and then they would apply.
we grant the waiver, you allow?
They can't do it without us. We need to send them a recommendation to do it.
Yes, procedurally, I'm
It's-
looking for some.
That's not
guidance.
correct, Jonathan. Some other parts of the bylaw where the planning board is not the special permit granting authority. The bylaw will say the special permit granting authority can act if the planning board makes a specific finding and saying, this does not say that. This just says the planning board, or if the SPGA is not planning board, the SPGA can grant it. No finding required, so we're here just as part of the typical process for recommendations on special permits. Not a required finding the board has to make.
I think it gives you
Now, it's
freedom.
pointing you to the special permit criteria as one way to arrive at a recommendation.
But we could. Why don't we wait and get an attorney's opinion on this?
I have a question. Up to you, I don't think it's really relevant to you. Yeah.
Well, we don't know what we're interpreting.
Well, it's one or the other. you know, either the percentage requirement applies in 8.4, or it doesn't. If it doesn't, then we don't have any say in the matter.
So I think we have to make a recommendation, we have to assume it does apply and then make the
Which is-
recommendation based on that.
which is what Chris suggested as initial language. So if the section 8.4,
And so then we have to decide why we would recommend to grant the waiver, like what is our basis for that, right?
Sometimes your recommendations have rationale attached to
Okay.
them, sometimes they don't.
So,
Oftentimes your minutes speak for themselves.
so we can think about the architecture in our recommendation, right?
Because there are special permit criteria that speak to social, economic, and
Yeah.
community needs,
Yeah.
neighborhood character, neighborhood character.
And so the big thing that this project's providing is housing, right? And if we think the housing is like, then maybe we don't recommend it because of that.
Or
Or we
because we
recommend-
really need housing, and the only way to get 20 units in the property is to call it mixed use.
Or our recommendation is contingent upon that.
Yeah.
Some sort of change in the first floor layout so that there's not a bunch of caves for people to sleep in.
Right.
It's a lot, a lot of bedrooms.
What do you think?
okay,
Pedro?
let's do some math here. So the ground floor, okay, so we're operating under the assumption right now that this would be a mixed use project. And the interpretation from the applicant, based on feedback the applicant has gotten, is that section 8.4.2 is applicable to this zone, right? It's an
Yeah.
MXD zone. And that section says that 25% of the street level footprint of the building should be commercial. So the building has a footprint of 6650 square feet per the narrative that's been provided to us. We asked the question, what's 25%? That's 1,705 square feet.
Yeah, that's off of 6820, I wrote down, so
6820, so if we do the math again,
that's what I mean, I don't know if I.
And does the overhang count?
footprint, so I
Footprint,
believe
it
that would
says
be
footprint.
that's what our code said.
Actually,
Yeah.
the narrative,
So I've got 1662, that is 6650.
yeah, now I got actually I got some help today on the architecture to make sure I got it right, so let me see if. Yeah, it says 6820 square feet on the ground floor, yeah,
6820 is what you've got?
yeah,
Nah,
and that's from,
there's tiny little numbers that are off.
and that's from the AutoCAD guy, so I believe
Okay.
him.
Maybe he's not counting stairwell in the footprint?
Footprint should be the whole footprint.
That's what I think. This is the footprint, right? The outline of the structure.
So it's 8,700 on the second floor, but it's 6820 on the first floor.
6820, so that's you just need to update that in your plan. You're telling me it's 6650 is what's in the application, so you're
Okay.
telling me it's
820.
20 square feet, and so 20 times 25%, that's the 1705.
That's what I came up with.
Okay,
So the footprint
then-
does not include the second. I mean, it's
the
not
footprint is just what is touching the ground.
what is
That's the
touching the ground
first.
in the first floor.
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't include the.
Total building square footage would be all floors, footprint would be.
The text specifically says street level floor space.
Mhm. Okay,
So this is
Yes.
7%,
AKA footprint.
okay.
so 7% is what we're talking about.
So I'd like to understand the magnitude of the reduction, right? So if 25% is what's required, and that's 1,705 square feet, they're asking for 480. Yes, we're talking about 7% of the whole building footprint. So that's a substantial reduction, right? I would say anything over 50% is substantial reduction. That said, we've got lots of feedback on the street in the past about whether it's mixed use or it's not mixed use. There are mixed uses on the street already. So having some commercial space makes sense. Would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it, mixed use makes sense, but is this mixed use by our definition? It is by our definition, but is it mixed use by 8.4? And does 8.4 apply?
Well, we're starting with the premise that 8.4 does
Yeah.
apply. That's the framework that we're having this discussion in. Because we're not lawyers.
And to tell you the truth, I mean, when we talked about the Manville development, I thought they were catching on a loophole to call it mixed use, because at the time, 8.4 said any commercial.
I don't
But we
disagree.
changed that after that
Yeah.
time, so that it was 25%, because we didn't want somebody to come in with just a token
Yeah,
commercial space.
which is what
and call it-
7%
Which
is.
is what this is.
But then well. And then what we did next. With. Multi-unit. Then seemed to, right, and then, so a project like this, so now we're dealing like a project like this would be by right, but. Because
So
of
we're gonna stick with the issue at
No, I
hand here.
know.
I understand where you're going and I appreciate the
Because I think
complex.
Malcolm's right with the
Yeah.
percentage, like that was the intent, I think the intent was 25%, but then. Like, has our intent now, like, is our intent now changing? I mean, I know the bylaws, so this, I think Malcolm's right.
I think
Like,
there has to be a
I'm
good reason to-
remembering
I think
that.
there has to be a good reason to change it. And I don't think this building is a good reason to change it, frankly.
I mean, I think if it was like like if the apartments were better, especially on the ground floor, like they were like, ah, these are great. This is gonna be great for someone to live in, then it would be easier to make the argument. But it's like, I mean, I have to agree with Pedro, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure any of us like the architecture. I don't know if that's like the rational.
I mean, I lived
Issue.
in one of these,
I think what they're saying is, well, we're giving them something, what are they giving us in return? Yeah, they're giving us this building
Mhm.
that, at least I'm hearing 3 people on this board.
We can decline to make a positive recommendation. We can make it, we can say you're unwilling to grant the waiver. I mean,
but I understand like what they seem to be going for with this and
it's a
constraints of.
procedural loophole.
Well,
Yeah.
no, but that they're trying to keep the cost of construction down as well to make these like reasonable. And like, if that's possible. If it's possible in today's world.
I mean, I guess we can give Mr. Spillies additional feedback. This has got frontage on South Main Street. It's a desirable mixed-use street. That's why we zoned the whole area mixed use. There could be rethinking of
So the
That's
architecture puts
street
the
facing.
commercial space.
Yeah,
on
if
the
that
street.
commercial space was on the street, I mean, I think Mel, and 25%,
Instead of
I
just
think,
an
right?
afterthought.
You wouldn't have a problem.
Well, all I know is, the bylaw says 25%.
It's
There
a
has to be a
relatively-
reason to grant a waiver. I don't see the reason to grant a waiver here.
That's fine. Make the motion.
Is that a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we, recommend that the select board not grant the waiver to reduce the commercial space requirement for mixed use, if applicable.
I'll second it.
Do we want that to be, okay, so we got a motion and a second. Do we want that to go with recommendations that,
I would. Just so it's not like, oh no,
Quality,
Hmm?
with the water quality.
Well,
No,
no, I mean, I think what Brandon is, what he had a clause that says something like, we don't feel that the design of the building warrants the granting of the waiver.
right, and that the relationship of the building to 2 streets
Yeah.
could more, could be in better keeping with the mixed use neighborhood by responding to the frontage in a way that is more meaningful and meets the intent of the bylaw.
Okay, I'd be willing to change my motion to include that. whatever you just said.
Do you wanna make any
Did you get
comments
it?
though
Yeah.
about
Can you
the
get it
living
from
spaces
recording?
as well?
The which,
The living spaces and how they interact
I
with,
have
I mean, cause
strong feelings like Pedro does.
Yeah.
I don't feel like. I think Pedro said it. We can send a copy of the minutes along to the,
can we send the copy to note, to please take note of that portion of the minutes?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, we have
Do you have
a
a problem?
motion and a second. Do we have further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, excellent. Thank you.
You're done for now.
We're done for now. Thank you.
I will reach out to you as far as, I think we'll make the 10th meeting. And then we'll reach out to you for the select board, but after that, I may need more time, before I come back to you, so I would ask you for patience in that regard, and I'll reach out to schedule. in
We
advance.
don't hold our breath waiting for you.
I'm sure, but I
I'll
just,
be here.
if I don't show up, you'll know it's because I'm working on it, so.
These are my favorite meetings.
Hang on a minute.
With site plan reviews, there's a 60-day clock, so.
Can we extend that if we need
Yes.
to? Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
send a letter.
Okay,
If you wanna
that, okay,
extend,
so we'll talk about that.
when you're ready.
I just wanted to understand that, okay.
Claudia, did you have a question as it relates?
Claudia Shapiro,
Does it relate to
78
this
on Plain Road.
application?
Say that again?
Does it relate to this application?
Yeah.
Okay.
Claudia Shapiro, 70 Digamon Plain Road. What exactly about the project warrants a waiver?
That's what we just discussed.
Right, but I
And
didn't,
we did not agree to grant a waiver.
but I'm asking what aspect of the project would even require a waiver? Why is it even in the mix?
There's an interpretation of the zoning bylaw that this project may be requiring 25% of the ground level floor space to be available as commercial space. And the applicant is showing quite a bit less than that, and because it's a lot less, they would need to ask for a waiver, and we just said, no, we're not granting a waiver.
And when you say waiver, are you talking actually a variance?
No. No,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
appreciate it.
Yep.
Appreciate your help.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. So moving on to the next item, 426 Park Street. Oh, yes. We've got the Housatonic Improvement Committee members here to share with us their latest thinking on 426 Park Street, also known as Cook's Garage, right?
And we just sent Chris, if you would indulge us, Scott just sent you an email with some files, if you could project them, that would be great.
And if you don't mind speaking
Yeah.
loudly for that owl, it will pick up your voice up. And then for the record, do you mind just telling Kim your names?
Hi, Kim. Angela Lamonto. I'm the chair of the Housatonic Improvement Committee,
Spell the last name.
LOMANTO.
Scott Short with two T's everywhere.
Scott, Angela, thank you for coming.
Thank
So
you.
Go ahead and let us, so are we pulling something up on the screen?
Yeah. So while we're doing that, so at the end of November, we had 9 different participants in an architectural charrette. 8 of those folks were architects, and 1 person was a specialist in public financing from NYU. All of them had ties to the Berkshires, even though they weren't all from here. But they split into sort of 3 teams and came up with 3 different ideas for 426 Park. And it was, excuse me, it was pretty exciting because our committee just doesn't have the wherewithal to come up with those ideas. And they didn't have any preconceived notions. We didn't give them any ground rules except dream and show us what you think could be done with this building. So we're going to show you 3 different designs.
Okay.
And what we'd like to do is have your feedback, because we have not made a recommendation to the select board yet, but we'd like to guide it a little bit by saying, apply under this zoning overlay or do this, or anyway, you'll see.
Okay.
So First-
Five.
Yeah, that's okay. This one is just general, a landscape architect was there and he, I'll go. And he, just doodled a little bit. This is Park Street here, and this is the river here. And he thought that this could be the entrance to the building with an exit going out the side. And that this would be a park area made by knocking down part of the building and creating like an atrium
Mhm.
and creating a river walk that would go along the river that way.
Is that the pier that's in the river?
Yes, right there, yeah.
Mhm.
So that's just sort of a general idea of the exterior.
Okay.
Are you in touch with Gloria Rubin?
I don't know who that is.
She owns the Weaven Mill next to you.
Oh, you mean where
This one.
Pulse is now?
Yeah.
We have not. But we can be.
Because you may have access issues too.
Mhm. Yep.
This has no frontage, right?
There's limited frontage, right?
There's no frontage, but there's deeded access.
But they may be, what they're showing, I don't know where the deeded access is, and they may be showing something that's changing that.
Okay, so that's just the landscape architect's take on the building. So if you could go to the next file,
What's the next one?
design one. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's it. Scott, do you wanna talk about this?
So I can, well, I'll take a stab at keeping me honest here. So I think one of the things that kind of came up from the conversation before they split into groups was the idea of, and I may get some of my architectural terminology incorrect here, but the idea of preserving sort of the skeleton or the shell of the building, right? So from the exterior, the brick facades, the big arched windows, and keeping that look, but not actually trying to use all of the interior structure. There's challenges with it. We actually had someone come and do a 3D scan of almost the whole building, whatever was safe. And that was great because it let them actually wander around, and they kept, digging in deep and looking around corners where they wanted to explore. So that was a good tool to have as part of that process. But I think they all landed on the idea that sort of keep that exterior facade, but almost build a new building inside the old building. For lack of a, but have I represented that kind of correctly? So this is a design that sort of does that. It opens up a certain area, and everybody really considered housing units.
And so just to orient us.
Yeah, let me.
Bottom of page is the portion that faces, Park Street.
Park Street is
Okay.
here,
Yeah.
and the river is
And
here.
the river is on the page left.
Right,
Okay.
and Chris, if you can scroll down just a little bit so that drawing is shown.
Yeah, the other down.
The other way.
Yeah.
They're down.
There we go. So this team, which was Sarah and Joe Lesh from Alfred, they just moved here from Chicago. Suggested that we add 2 stories, 2.5 stories to this existing parcel. Because the finance person who was attending said that you really can't do anything financing wise unless you have at least 20 units. So if you imagine you're looking at the building from Park Street, you can see it's 1, 2, 3, 4.5 stories. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, and they envision the access here. Kind of over the water, main entrance, which would be. Have a food service tenant, back of the house for food service. An event garden, which would be that area that the landscape architect showed as grass. And they would keep the arched window wall so that you'd have the frame of the river and these big arches. Dining room here, storage, elevator, and then this would all be housing.
Can they get rid of the roof in that triangle area?
Correct.
When you say this would be housing, it would be that.
The east side of the
wall,
building, page right.
Yes, yes. And then you can see more house studios and larger apartments up above that with some penthouses on the top facing
West.
west,
This is facing.
Facing the river.
facing the river and the mountains.
Facing the river.
Yeah, yeah. So this was, kind of an exciting thing to think about because we couldn't conceptualize that until they did it. And then we thought, oh, yeah, of course. And if you remember, this is where all the water is. The cisterns are here on ground level.
Here.
Where's the actual well?
Nobody knows.
Well, isn't there like well access off the building to the north that connects to the building next? I think there's some kind of access.
Chris, maybe you can answer that better than we can, because the water seems to come up like right here. And then it goes into two cisterns, and there's another cistern up here, and it all kind of cascades and,
Pipes and pumps and.
yes.
We think that the artesian well in this building, we think goes straight down. There was some supposition that it was from a spring on the mountain and pipe laid in, but nobody's been able to ever find that pipe or spring house in 150 years. So we put current on the pipe and traced pipes all over the place, but never could find. So some people say the technology didn't exist to drill that straight down, but it must go straight down.
And Dale Colburn owns half of the well, right?
No, there's a new owner of that property. Her name is Agnes.
The abutting property owns 50% of the water
Yeah.
rights.
So it's not Dale Culleton anymore.
Okay, so Chris, the building is, the water is in the building and then it goes out to that one junction, but then takes it out to the red metal building?
Yeah, somehow.
The abutting the well is on this property.
Yeah.
The abutting property has 50% of the water rights. Currently, it does take some of the water through a junction pipe. It's, you know, like any water service would be a couple feet on the ground.
But, and is it accurate to say most of the water just comes through there and then gets pumped out into the river?
It just falls back
falls.
into the river.
It just falls. into-
Yeah.
I didn't see in the narrative there any rationale for why that well is in there, the use of it or anything, does anybody know?
It used to be part of the mill, this part of the mill was bleaching or finishing. And it may have been associated with that.
Chris gave us
Nobody
a,
knows, unfortunately.
yeah, Chris, you gave us a blueprint of sorts of the whole mill area.
Yeah.
And there actually was a little river that was going through that parking lot underneath what is the one-story red building now. So somehow there was water going all through those mills and going back into the river.
Where that red building is, between the red building and Pulse, there was a mill race right through there. That was for power. Yeah, or it was part of the original course of the river, I'm not sure. But it might have been a mill race for power, yeah. Anyway,
Interesting.
that's unrelated to the
Right.
artesian well, not associated with the river at all.
Right. Any questions about this before we go any further? Okay. Chris, could you go to the next one? Yeah, please. So, this is, another version of what we just saw, but this is an overlay. This is tracing paper that goes onto another drawing. So could you go to the next one? This is the upper floors.
This one?
Yeah. So this was Clark and Green and Bradley Architects got together, and you can see the 3D drawing of the building here. And then, yep. This would be Pulse coming out here, the Ruben Mill.
Oh.
Go ahead and go down. So they again thought about an atrium in the corner of that building with a raised river walk with, you know, with stairs going up and then going along the river over here. And then reinstating the bridge that would go to the other side. A common space residences here, pretty similar to the first one we saw. But they actually, in the next overlay, they actually figured out how to delineate an apartment. Oh, this is just west and east. You can go to,
I think it wasn't this one.
so they actually figured out what an apartment would look like. And then just replicated it on all the floors.
The thing I think though, in all cases, right, regardless of any of these iterations, and they're all fairly similar, is the challenges around parking, right? So that there isn't any, it's a landlocked site. And so I think one of the things was to come back to you folks to say, look, people, you know, there's costs associated with all of that development and. But how do we, so the last time we were here, we talked about the fact that this building exists in a district with several different overlays on it, right? But I think for anybody to examine this through an RFP process, if that was deemed to be appropriate, they're gonna come up against that, whether you do 20 units or 18 units or 24 units or add a couple stories to get some more units, there's no parking. So how does that get addressed?
So I'm actually working on a project in another community that's sort of similar to this, where the mill building is basically a parcel, the building is the parcel, right? And so similarly, and you really have to, in our car-centric environment, you have to find some off-site location to accommodate vehicles, and I think we've tried to be super flexible with the zoning for this area, and if you guys have another opinion, but just when a development proposal comes forward, that parking should be at least acknowledged concurrently.
Right.
I don't know that the town has any space that they could offer as shared parking. That would be sort of the ideal if we had, you know, a space where shared parking could happen, but unfortunately, I don't believe we do. So it's.
It's illegal to park on the bridge.
And it's.
So we're talking to Bettina Montano, who is moving Pulse from the Reuben Mill to 410 Park Street.
Mhm.
And we're both trying to get a hold of the woman who owns the one-story red building,
Mhm.
because that parcel is 7.5 acres.
Mhm.
And if that red building weren't there,
Mhm.
somehow that business could be incorporated into this mill,
Mhm.
then it would open up a whole lot of
Mhm.
possibilities. So
Yeah.
we're just poking at it at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so I mean, that's what we've had to do, we've had to go
Sure.
find elsewhere in the community and then like. Talk about like what is the pedestrian connectivity, because you're putting people then on foot to get there, so.
Right.
It's great that you've gotten this far.
It is.
Thanks for having people think about it and be
Yeah.
creative.
Can you just go to design 2, the last file? Yeah, what, did we look
Sorry.
at that one?
I have something in mind. This
Oh,
one?
yeah, same. We did look at that. Okay, yeah.
I love the idea of like leaving the brick openings and like just having that like. A reflection of what used to be there from the industrial
It's such a
standpoint.
beautiful view, but
It is.
unfortunately, those interior rooms are falling apart.
Yeah,
But that wall looks good.
It does.
And that's kind of what they all said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and one of the architects, I think it was this one, envisioned it finished as an atrium, so a glass roof
Mhm.
with members going from the building to the outside wall to hold it up,
Mhm.
which would also be really interesting.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it'd be beautiful.
I think you're open to the sky. I was talking to DJ about doing that at the gym over here, because the walls at the gym at the high school. That building was really cool, and he was gonna tear it down, and I was just telling him, or asking him, just take the roof off, it, stabilize the walls and just leave it. I mean, imagine that as like an event space or a park space, so for people to use all the time. A place where people get married, a place where people have wedding celebration, or whatever, or anyway, I think it would have been really cool, because you have that trace of history
Right.
surrounding you. That's really cool. And then having it open to the sky, I think is really powerful.
Mhm.
How do you get the height though here?
The
That
height,
they're talking about 4.5 stories.
you would add 2.5 stories
No, I'm
on.
getting that, but how in zoning? How do you?
What do we allow there, 40, is it 45 feet?
It's, no, that's only, it's only, isn't it HVC? Oh, no, it's the mill overlay. And that's 45?
How many units were residential units? 10, 20,
Over 20.
Over 20.
over 20 was the ballpark.
Mhm.
Cause that's was the 20 units that you were talking about in terms of financing, those were the res units, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah, and there was somebody pretty adamant that said, that does this for a living,
Like
and
you,
said,
you
no
need
one's
that
gonna.
threshold or else.
It gives you 40 feet.
Yeah, you won't get out real
Is
quick.
it 45?
40 feet.
Which would be amazing if it could happen, right?
And that gives you flying.
And one group said that the water could be used for either hydroponics or a brewery, and then that could tie to some of the other spaces, so, the use of the water TBD.
I would love there to be a use of the water. I've asked this question a number of times and yeah, I think it's a complicated answer,
It's beautiful water, tested it, and it's
Is it clean?
but incredible.
But what's the issue with the water? Because you can't determine.
No.
So-
control, like.
It can't be a
control
public
of that.
drinking water source.
Yeah.
Because of the
source.
because the source is
unknown and
undefined,
can't be
but it
controlled.
can be private.
It can be used for commercial purposes,
Purpose.
but it can't, I think a public wellhead is 20 people, I don't know the regs offhand, but it can be a public water supply. Over, which is over a certain number of.
It's like 22 bedrooms or something.
Something like that, because because it has to be controlled and owned, and there can't be any other, use in that. And here you have a railroad, and roads and happy village.
So the I zone does have a building height limit of 40 feet. So
In 3 stories.
But does the mill overlay allow?
I don't
more?
see anything in the mill overlay
that
that
would allow us to
Addresses-
increase it.
there is dimensional requirements there, but not height. Just setbacks and entrances and so on.
No?
Something to look
How many
at.
height is it gonna be there?
I mean, if you look at are you thinking that, Jonathan, in terms of the existing mills being taller than 3 stories?
I mean, I would think you should be able to build to the context area. So if they did want to do 4 stories, why not let them build it up to the big mill?
We did do contextual for front yard setback, right?
I think 410 is more than 40 feet.
Right.
I've been in that building, that building.
Yeah, it seems like.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know about poles.
3 stories is probably 15.
Well, dwellings are limited
Floors
to
are like
35
15 feet, yeah.
in the I zone.
Hmm?
Dwellings in the I zone are limited to 35.
Guess I would consider this like a mixed use though, right?
It doesn't say residential, it says dwellings, so. I wish.
No, but it says
It'd be nice if we were
But
consistent.
underneath it says other.
Yeah.
It's 5,000 minimum for the lot, right?
Yeah,
So that's what what they're showing is other.
yeah, but just the use word dwellings there is.
But maybe.
No, it's
you know, revision.
Right,
of
for
the-
the houses.
Well, It says, within the 983 is the historic mill. Or historic mill, what is it, historic mills revitalization overlay, that's quite a mouthful. Are you do you have that section up?
Yes,
No,
we do.
you don't. Okay. Yeah, this does not seem to have anything. New structures not in conformance with the underlying zoning may be permitted by special permit. So perhaps you could achieve it through a special permit.
So if someone were to build a structure within the structure, would that be considered a new build?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
it?
But you're building on it anyway, right?
But the.
And you're gonna be expanding the square footage by
Well, so this would be
Greater than.
classified as a substantial structural
substantial,
change,
yeah,
right? That's what it says here.
even if you weren't.
But it has to be on the same footprint, right? It says you may reconstruct a building in the same footprint.
New structures or the reconstruction, extension, alteration, or substantial structural change of an existing structure that is non-conforming in the underlying zone shall require a special permit. I think you could do it through a special permit process. Because it would be reconstruction, new structure, new construction, substantial structural, think you could- 983. What's 985 say? Yeah, absolutely. 985 is expansion of existing buildings. Existing buildings through a special permit under this section may be expanded, provided that such expansion is consistent with the existing building's historic character and scale and does not cause substantial detriment. Well, that'll be fun to
The
interpret.
existing buildings,
We make the
historic
argument.
character and scale though, not existing buildings, right?
I guess I would say we have historically contextualized.
So if our committee were to make a recommendation to the select board to issue an RFP, is it possible that this board could make some sort of loose ruling that could go along with that RFP? For instance, it could be a special permit could be issued, a parking waiver could be enforced or anything like that, or do you only work from definite plans?
It's not a parking waiver though, right? It's just
We're
a
the,
parking-
we have recently learned that we're the planning board, and so we're allowed to like plan all sorts of stuff. We've probably constrained ourselves to looking at plans that come before us, but I'd like to think in this case that we could try to be helpful in providing a framework of understanding the zoning and what could and couldn't be achieved to try and make redevelopment of that space viable.
I agree. Yeah,
So we wouldn't be the special permit granting authority for that, but we would work with you to push them. To, you know, to grant you,
Right,
We could provide some like
Waivers and-
informational context.
right.
How it could be done.
I think in our discussions, that's been partly what we're trying to accomplish is to put a bit of a, for lack of a better term, a red bow around an RFP, right? So to also, yeah, or a little easier to nudge it
Yeah.
along and even to say, look, there's a recognition that you probably can't park on this site. You have to have a plan, but that people will consider, as long as you meet those requirements some other way, that will be considered, right? Because that moves someone along the process of like,
Right.
okay, let's really look at this as opposed to, there's nowhere to park next. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think if you guys, with all the work you've done, and thank you so much for taking this on as a committee, but with all the work you've done, if you could provide the sort of narrative and understanding, what's the existing condition, right? Like, how many square feet are there? How big's the parcel?
Well, the
Like,
town has done that already.
Okay,
There's
so
a-
you've got
There's a
that
report that.
as
Mhm, yep.
background, and
yes.
then what's the vision for the program? Like, how is the space gonna be used?
Mhm.
Like, and then based on that, we can help provide some framework for how it can be achieved through the zoning.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we're pretty close. We just don't have the narrative of how the space could be used, but we've got these designs.
yeah,
So do you want a written narrative that could be a proposal, like a proposed use of the building could be this, and we could kind of,
I think it's the committee's vision, right? Like, it's a mixed use space with X number of square feet of commercial space and X number of units. And if you've been working financially to like figure out what that right number of residential units is to make it all viable, like, make that your floor, right? With at least X number of units. I don't know, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, two things. Number one, the planning board would be the special permit granting authority for the Houstonic Mill overlay district.
Oh,
yeah,
Not would be, is.
Right, right.
okay,
Did you know that?
Yeah.
The select board would,
I've been looking for
I,
that.
I was
Sorry.
waiting to bring it up.
Okay.
the select board would be the board, issues the RFP.
Mhm.
And I think similar to Houstonic School, the select board sought the input of the Houstonic Improvement Committee and the planning board as to what to include types of uses. Um, But I think you're right, an RFP should discuss potential uses, what we think is viable. And then there's a few obstacles that have been identified, the landlocked nature of the parcel. How to access it from a pedestrian standpoint and from a vehicular standpoint, and where the parking could be. And maybe it's something that the committee and the select board wanna try to discuss with the budding property owners to have some sort of support moving forward, issue an RFP that says, we've discussed this with with the abutting properties, and we think we could all play well together and, you know, because it could be, as you say, more of a red ribbon around the package if you had that, but if another developer came in and saw that there or thought that there wasn't a chance to work with the abutting properties, they might just walk away and say, put my hard-earned money somewhere where
Right.
it's more of a sure thing. So I think there would be, you know, advantageous to do some communication work in that regard before
That's good advice.
issuing an RFP, maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's good if you can show all that groundwork, I think. I think that's what you're trying to do is
Yeah,
to show that you've actually done all your homework and whatever these guys need,
Right,
it's already been thought of.
And these
Yeah.
sketches too.
Yeah.
Include these.
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know, even if there is, you know, I know it's not a specific, necessarily a fully threshed out specific proposal, but even if, you know, your committee had the discussions about overlays and heights and special permits allowed, or, and could say, look, we think that you could build this number of stories, right? I mean, I think that would give someone a lot of peace of mind, as opposed to thinking, well, the only way we can make this work is with this many units, we have to add a story, is that even gonna be allowed? And they start flipping through the zoning docs to choose their own
And if they have a
adventure.
feeling they're not fighting City Hall,
Correct.
then, you know, I can't believe there would be anybody that we wouldn't be enthusiastic about developing that property,
Right.
so.
But it's a tough site. I
Yeah.
mean, with the Housatonic School, the town had earmarked some money for the envelope and had committed to abating the hazardous materials. And none of that exists for this building. So the more we can do to make it attractive, the more attractive it'll be.
Mhm.
So, okay, so we owe you a written description of what is possible,
Mhm.
and you're gonna react with some possibilities for that kind of program.
Yes,
Okay,
But I think to Chris's point of reaching out to the other mill abutters, I mean, I think that would go a long way with, I mean, I would think it would go a long way with any
I think that's
potential.
yeah, that can happen in parallel, but
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
before an RFP is issued, like some
Yeah.
sort of a butter communication would be
Yeah,
useful.
because I'm sure they want to know as well.
Well, it sounds like you've done some of that
We've
already,
reached out.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll continue trying.
okay,
Mhm.
wonderful, thank you.
Okay, thank
so
you.
much. Yeah,
Okay.
good one, thank you.
It's really a beautiful spot.
It is.
There were, you know, it was remarked that this is, was it? Did we say this is also in the smart growth overlay district? Yeah, so that, remember, that came with funds.
That's
And
true.
so there are some funds in the bank in the town now
Yeah.
for,
You can look at it.
Well, if it's,
And
if
you-
if they develop affordable housing, yeah.
well, funds.
No, it was
Not
just, it was
necessarily
just,
for
So
affordable,
it's
it's for
smart
capital
growth
improvements
do we,
to promote housing,
Yeah.
and so, you know, to the point that Housatonic School had CPA funds and other funds available. To help entice the developer and say, look, we have funds to help with their envelope. Those funds could exist here. I think it would take maybe a vote of the select board to say, well, let's program these funds, at least loosely, for this redevelopment. That could, I think that worked well for Housatonic School.
Yeah.
Chris, are you talking about once the units are completed, the
No,
funds,
so
those funds, or the
when-
funds that we already received?
Already received for passing the zone.
Yeah, so remember, there were two
Yeah.
instances of funding, one was when we passed the
Yeah.
zoning, and the other
And
is
the
upon
other is when,
completion,
yeah.
depending on the housing that gets
Yeah.
built.
And do you, for this kind of density, do we get the completion?
What do you mean?
Like if they're,
With
if they're
these
doing
five
20
units.
residential units on this parcel, is,
Yeah. I don't
you
think
still
it-
get the production?
I think so.
That's
Well,
a
thank you all
really-
for
great.
your information.
Thank you, Chris. I'll be in touch then to find out what those specifics are.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great, have a good night, thank you. All right, moving on, town planners report.
Just briefly tonight, just to keep you updated, we said we would dedicate portions of your meetings to both the ADA plan and the open space and recreation plans. On item A here, which is the ADA plan, didn't really see a reason to bring BRPC staff back tonight. They haven't progressed too far. But what they have done is make contact with various groups in town, including like the senior center and others to talk about programming and some assistance with creating the plan. And they've also made appointments with various town departments and buildings to start evaluating the buildings themselves for accessibility. I think they'll be at some of the libraries and other buildings next week. So staff is, on the way towards gathering the information for the plan. So maybe at your second March meeting, they can come back and present where they are so far with the ADA plan. In terms of the open space and recreation plan, for reasons unknown, we still have not heard from the state as to whether or not they'll grant funds to help with updating that plan. We have some funds to work with BRPC staff on that, but we were counting on another substantial amount of funds to help with that planning process. So we haven't kicked anything off yet because we're still waiting.
I think that's prudent though.
Yeah. But maybe at the next meeting or at the late March meeting, we can talk about both of these two.
Anything
So
else?
that's all I have for those.
Okay.
Chris, where would potential like energy development, does that have a place in that open space plan?
Energy development,
Yeah, so like renewable energy development,
solar.
meaning in Western Mass to supply Eastern Mass. Like, is there a way to get ahead on any of that in something like an open space and recreation plan? Like,
Not sure I'm following you.
Well, there's,
like, is there gonna be, like, is there a way to get ahead of it to try to limit, let's say, where that might take place?
To get ahead of what? I'm sorry.
Well, so, I mean, is there any pressure from Boston to start producing energy in Western Mass to supply Eastern Mass?
well, they're drafting regulations now on the new energy bill that was passed. And the regulations give the energy board the right to determine where large-scale solar goes and to decide what bylaws can apply for local. BRPC is looking into that because that's in conflict with some of the other goals of the state, which provide protection for open space, protection for historical properties, protection for agriculture. So they're trying to come up with a consolidated, what is the principle, what driving the state on all of these issues. So, and the governor said she's going to come up with some kind of umbrella, state picture that might help bring these things together. But right now, it's not that way. So,
If there is a suspicion that there will be a siting board in Boston that kind of erases local zoning because it says you must put a huge solar farm. That's the fear.
Well, my fear is like where the
So I
open
think the way-
space is.
So the way to preserve the open space would be to put a full conservation restriction on it, and then it becomes Article 97 land, and assuming that this special commission doesn't have the power to overrule Article 97.
That's
that's still up in the air.
Okay, so
that's what I'm
We
I
should
wanting.
can't answer
Keep our eye
the
on
question
it.
yet. Keep your eye on
I mean,
it.
regulations haven't been drafted yet. I mean, they've been drafted and they're being commented on, but they haven't been issued yet. So there's no regulations.
It would be a pity. I mean, this town has taken a pretty proactive approach to citing solar, by right in industrial zones, by special permit in other zones, rooftop by right. I mean, this town's been pretty proactive on that. It'd be a pity to see.
You can't put it on the front yard on the hill.
All right, board issues, subcommittee updates, issues and concerns, no,
Nothing tonight.
Jeremy? No? Thank you. Okay, none for me either. Citizen speak? Anyone? Barbara's hand is raised. Hang on, Barbara, we'll get you unmuted. Hi, Barbara, go ahead. Oh, you gotta unmute yourself.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
I'm Barbara Matz, 22 Mahawi Street. I just want to say I appreciate the concern of all of you concerning the site plan at 546 Main Street. And I just want to express one additional concern that I share actually with my neighbors, and that's using Mahawi Street as a vehicle exit and entranceway into and out of the proposed complex. As I'm sure you're well aware, Mahawi Street is a relatively short, narrow street. It's a mixed neighborhood, housing families as well as offices and businesses. And what's really nice is that we are a neighborhood with quite a number of kids, some of them very young. And it just so happens that for these kids, as well as for others in the neighboring houses, their school bus stop is on the corner at the north side of Mahawi Street at Route 7. In other words, immediately facing opposite what is now proposed to become the driveway entrance into the property. And we see this juxtaposition as a major potential danger. And maybe if Mahawi Street were wider and had sidewalks that were in better condition, the danger potential wouldn't be so great for the neighborhood kids who I see every day walking or running to and from the bus stop. But this is not the reality. And I would add also, in addition to the major concern, the primary concern for the kids, it's also a very popular walking route on Mahawi Street for a lot of people in the neighborhood. And besides that, we have enough of a difficulty already just getting in and out of our driveways with all the different businesses and generally the traffic that's going on and all the time, and parked cars on the side and trucks, and so this is a big concern. So my question is, would you be willing to review the issue and consider supporting a proposal for the complex's driveway access to be located on Route 7 rather than on Mahawi Street? It seems to me that this isn't an exceptional practice on Route 7. And from their site plan, it looks like they would only have to extend the driveway a little bit to reach Route 7, and they wouldn't have to change anything else. And so that's our major concern for the neighbors here. And the other related question is that Mahawi Street is a street that sometimes resembles a busy thoroughfare connecting Routes 7 and 23. And on a daily basis, it's filled with delivery trucks of all sorts, traffic flowing in and out of the offices and businesses, and overflow parking on the street. The traffic congestion often turns Mahawi into a one-way street. And importantly, on top of this, it's a much-used ambulance route between Fairview Hospital and Route 23. So my second question is, has there been a current traffic study done on Mahawi Street? And if not, I would request that one be done before any final decisions and recommendations be made. And I think it would be very important for your overall review of the proposed project. And I thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wanted to make comment? Seeing no other commenters, we'll adjourn at 8:09. Thank you.